Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Hello, welcome to July. My god, it's been a month. This has so far been the longest month of my entire life. No. I've watched a lot of movies. I haven't watched many TV shows. I don't think actually I've watched any. I think I've watched random episodes of like X-Files and stuff. But for the most part, basically just Seinfeld. Because my parents are now overseas, so I have been building Lego sets in the kitchen and watching Seinfeld, because I haven't really watched all of Seinfeld. Like, I've watched it, but not really watched it. You know, there's like so many episodes I haven't seen, so I figured I'd, actually do a full watch of it. But yeah, so Seinfeld's one thing, but that's fun. I like Seinfeld. We don't watch it as much as Friends, which is annoying. We watch Friends way too often. Friends is way too safe. Anyway, what movies did I watch this month? Because it's mostly been hammering down and watching movies. I started on the first of the month with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This was my first watch. Yeah, my first watch of it, because I did rewatch it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was good. Me and my mate actually went and saw it, and we had to move down to the second row because of how quiet it was. That wasn't great, but the seats were a lot more comfortable down the front, which is weird. But yeah, I thought it was good. I still prefer the first film, just because this one doesn't end, mostly. And also because, I don't know, again, another Spider-Man film with too many villains. Just keeps on going, doesn't it? But I guess we'll see in 5 years' time when the next film comes out, so that'll be exciting. On the second, I watched Mrs. Doubtfire. I gave that 3.5 stars. I'd never really watched it before. I tried watching Flubber initially. I had watched it. I was at my girlfriend's parents' place because she's still overseas, and I had to film nearby her place, so I figured I'd stay there for the night. I watched an episode of X-Files, watched the first 30 minutes of Flubber. It was so bad, we were just like, nah, screw this, let's put on a different movie. And then Mrs. Doubtfire popped up, so I'm like, I've never really watched it. Like, I've seen parts of it. I feel like I've seen the whole film, but not really, so I felt like I'll just put it on. So I watched it, I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't even consider it a rewatch because, But, yeah, like I said, it also happens to be one of those classic films that I've seen but never really seen, given it's so iconic you'd think you'd seen it when you've only saw 20 minutes of it. On the 4th, I did a double feature. I did My Stepmother as an Alien, which I liked it. I thought it was really rough for like the first, did I actually say how long? First 40 minutes is really rough. But then after that, it's very funny. It's not a great movie. It's still messy as hell. The plot is obnoxiously terrible, like to the point that there is a plot and there isn't, and then they like rush the conclusion of the plot that they barely even started in the first place. But there are a lot of very funny bits. It's got a decent transfer, this being the Arrow video version. But yeah, I called that a freebie in that video because I bought 3 things from Cinemaniacs, and I happen to have like a $30 voucher from Afterpay, so I used it at there, and it was a $30 Blu-ray, so I'm like, oh, I'll get it for free, sure, technically, I don't know. Then I followed it up with The Little Mermaid, the original from '89. I haven't ever really seen it before. I feel like that's another like Mrs. Doubtfire where I feel like I've seen it, but I haven't really, and trust me, I really had not seen any of this movie outside of the Under the Sea part, because let's be honest, that part's iconic. I gave it 4 stars. The animation is amazing. It looks really nice. It's just a nice film in general. It's really dramatic, I will admit. A lot more dramatic than I expected, but it was cool. I liked it. I don't know, I just had a lot of fun watching it. It did remind me of that Futurama episode where where they find mermaids and Fry tries to have sex with a mermaid, and he discovers that they don't have the parts that he requires, and he has a panic attack and runs. So, yeah. It was weird that at the end of the kids' movie I was reminded of Fry trying to have sex with a mermaid. Who'd have thought? On the 6th, I did the drive-in. Wow. I was meant to watch it on the 5th. Crashed the car, so I didn't do that. And by crash, I mean I accidentally reversed into the garage door. It was halfway up. I couldn't see it, and it just clipped the antenna of my car. So that was wonderful. It's all good. Everything's fine. But that was so much shock, and there was started raining anyway, that I said to my friend, we'll do it tomorrow night. So we watched it at the drive-in at the Luna. I don't think I'll ever go back there because it's also closing in like 2 weeks and they've sold out the majority of their sessions, and I don't really care. It's a good distance from my place, but, like, it's close enough that I could easily go there literally whenever I wanted to. But at the same time, I much prefer the Coburg drive-in. There are other drive-ins that I much prefer, and I don't really like going to drive-ins that often. So I prefer the summer days especially, so it's not cold. You don't have to have blankets and the heater on. Your car isn't fogging up, so you got to turn it on every fucking half an hour so, like, that radio doesn't turn off. There's a lot of shit that's just really annoying with the drive-in. But still, it was interesting to rewatch it. I wanted to get more of a critical understanding of the movie. There were elements of it that I think I'd gotten everything on the first watch, but it is a long film. Even when I first watched it, I was like, it was getting towards the end, and I'm like, when is this movie going to end? And then I remembered it's a two-part, and I'm like, oh, this movie's not going to end. And it kind of did, but not really. It ended better than the next film, but I still gave it 4 stars. I think it's good, but I think... I think a lot of people are overblowing it. Sure, the animation style is great, but the narrative isn't that yoo-hoo to go home about. But, I guess I don't care that much for the multiverse stuff. I'm kind of tired of it as well. But then I watched Fast X. This was actually with a colleague who had been wanting to watch it with me for probably a month by that stage, because she initially wanted to see it with a partner, but then they kept breaking up and getting back together again, and they ended up splitting up permanently, so we went and saw it. And it's not a great film. I gave it 2 stars. I do like the fast films, but this one was really tiresome. It's okay. It's not great. I did like Jason Momoa in it, though. By the second half of the movie, he, like, completely changed his character from being overly serious to being basically a gay lunatic. And I'm like, I love this. This is great. Why wasn't he like this for the whole movie? And the good thing is, the movie doesn't end. So he's going to be the villain in the next one, which means he can continue his tirade of stuff, which is wonderful. I don't know if I'll watch it, but we'll see. Then on the 9th, I did a double feature of Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, because I wanted to watch that Blu-ray I'd gotten, that being the Arrow video again, yeah. It was fine. I didn't like it that much. It was one of those... It's so much of a generic everything 80s thrown into one movie. Like, you've got the mall, or you've got the bad teenagers, like the annoying teenagers because they're the main characters, the evil people, corporate people, capitalism, this, it doesn't really, it's not that interesting to me. The effects works are really interesting. That's probably the best part about the movie. But even I didn't really care much for the Phantom of the Opera stuff, because they're all the same story, It's always someone who's been screwed over and they get their revenge, and they're also, like, half mutated or burnt or something. Like, if I'm going to watch one of those movies, I'm either going to watch either the original Phantom of the Opera, at least like the Lon Chaney version, even the 50s one is quite nice, or realistically, Phantom of the Paradise. So, yeah. But on the 9th as well, I watched Hot Rod, because I just wanted to watch a 90-minute long comedy. I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I hadn't seen it before. I've had the Blu-ray for a long time now. And, it's just one of those classic Andy Samberg, Lonely Island films, and it was funny. It was dumb, but it was funny. I liked it, On the 10th, I went to the Cinemaniacs, and we saw My Own Private Idaho, which was interesting. I gave it 4 stars. I still gave it a like. I don't love it. It was one of those films I've been wanting to watch for years now, and I even wanted to get the Criterion. I just hadn't gotten around to it. And they just had a screening, so I'm like, I'm going to go see it. And I really enjoyed seeing it. I hung out with Phil and Katie afterwards. They introduced me to their friend. Like, Lee did a presentation, which was actually really good. Like, one of the best presentations I think he's done before a film. So, everything about it was still great. The screening was great. It was funny. It was interesting. Like, it's at a stage I realized that the characters were talking like it was Shakespeare, and it turns out it's actually based on a Shakespeare thing. It was like Henry V or something. So I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not as well versed in Shakespeare. I have that big book of, hey, look, here's all the Shakespeares, but I haven't read them all because I'm not going to read all the Shakespeares. God damn it, If I wanted to do that, I had my time in high school, and I didn't use that time in high school to read Shakespeare. I could watch, like, all the adaptations, but oofed, maybe? I don't know. On the 11th, I did a double feature again, because my binge account was running out, so I figured, I'd take a look and see what I could watch. I also skimmed through Picnic at Hanging Rock to see the TV show, to see what parts of it I was in. I did find myself in a small, tiny little portion of the second episode, but outside of that, zilcho. But, I didn't really watch the show, so that's alright. I watched like the first 2 episodes when it first aired, but I didn't really like it that much. But I did watch Fletch because I love Confess Fletch, and I wanted to watch the original. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It's one of those... it's a style of comedy that is not bad, but I didn't love it. I don't know. I mean, even I said, worthy of a few chuckles, of a good score, and Gina Davis, she doesn't really do much in the film, but she's there. The best gag was probably the breakdown for work expense costumes, because Fletch, it's not a gimmick, it's part of the job. So, yeah, he just dresses up as a lot of different characters. That was a big style of comedy. Oh, he's going to dress up as all these different people, because it's funny. It's like, the chameleon actor kind of thing, prior to politically correctness. So, yeah, I think people say comedy died when they stopped being able to dress up like black people or Middle Eastern people, as in white people dressing up like that. It is what it is. But then I followed that up with Violent Night, which is also on Netflix, which I find very funny. I was going to get the Blu-ray, but then I was like, it's on binge. I could watch it on here. I actually really liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was just going to be a bad Christmas... I was going to say Christmas ripoff of Die Hard. Santa ripoff of Die Hard. It is Christmas. They're both Christmas movies. Yeah, I know, weird. I'm watching a Christmas movie in June. But I actually really thought it was fun. It was a lot more graphic than I expected. Like, it basically took its concept and really rammed it. Like, really went for it. There were Home Alone style elements that it really went all out for. I thought it was a lot of fun. The violence was amazing. It was really amusing. Yeah, it's a lot longer than I expected it to be, because it was like almost 2 hours long. Yeah, I liked it. I liked some of the character dynamics. I didn't care for a certain portion of it. I didn't care that much for the villains, but the way a lot of them were killed, very fun. So, yeah, it still is just a, Home Alone cross with Die Hard, but bloody as hell. And I think David Harbour was good. I liked as well how they introduced a lot of the stuff that you're familiar with the Santa stuff, like his bag, the reindeers, the naughty list. All that stuff was just like naturally brought in. Like, he just kind of had it and he used it and whatever, and they didn't really explain it till later in the film, because it's like, it's not important. It all feels naturally like this is what he would do. It's got this magical essence to it, and that's what allows you to kind of get this different perspective on the film, and I like that about it. And even when they did try to explain it later, they used it mostly through gags and this element of, is he really Santa? And it worked, I think. So, yeah. On the 12th, I watched Suzume, because me and my mate have watched a lot of the films that this same director has done, this being Makoto Shinkai. I think I've watched 3 of his films now. I've seen Your Name, twice. So, Suzume, I saw Weathering with You with him as well, with my friend. I don't think I've seen any of his other films. I thought it was good. I gave it 4 stars. It's one of those films that, again, you go to... there's already the great animation, the interesting, heart-wrenching story. It's one of those things that I feel like it could have been a mini-series because of the style of the film. It's basically from here to there, to there, to there, to there, and basically rinse and repeat the same thing of stop this cataclysmic event from happening, move on to the next thing. It could have been a 1-season-long mini-series that I feel like, again, it's an anime. It could have just been the 1-season thing, and I think it could have worked better that way. Could have allowed you to flesh out the characters, have a lot more fun with the side characters and whatever. But, instead it was more rushed into a, 2-hour-long film? Yeah. But I did also like the elements of, which I didn't know until after watching the movie, of how a lot of it's about forgetting traumas, especially for how there are generations of people now who have forgotten about the big earthquake that happened and stuff like that. There's a lot of cultural stuff. As it is, there's a lot of things with maybe in Australia, there's a lot of different things in America and the UK and in Japan, in a lot of different countries, that they all have their cultural perspectives on things. And in this case, because it was such a big cultural thing, because it was such a big thing, I didn't know that was the subtext to Shin Godzilla until I watched the review, and they were like, oh, that was that's the subtext there. That's what inspired it. And that's basically the same as this. This movie is inspired by how people have moved on from it and like forgotten about it, and how those like traumas have like changed like their society, but they have like with one generation's been affected by it, but the next have moved on. I guess it would be like the American equivalent for 9/11, but it really wouldn't be because they won't shut the fuck up about it. So, you know, on the 13th, I watched Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping. This is a rewatch. I think we watched it on Netflix. Yeah. It's still very funny. I liked it the first time I watched it. Because I got the Blu-ray and I'd always heard it was very funny or whatever, because again, Lonely Island film. Yeah, it was fun to watch it with my friends with a group watch, because it's just a funny movie, you know, why not? Gave it 4 stars. Then I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I was just in the mood, because everyone was goddamn talking about Indiana Jones, because the new one's coming out, and yeah, I had to watch it. I had to rewatch it. I rewatched the 4K. I love this movie. I gave it 5 stars. It's my favourite of the Indiana Jones films. I've got nothing to dissuade me about it. I absolutely love it. Everything about it I enjoy so much. I had watched a breakdown video talking about it, and I think that was what mainly convinced me to rewatch it, because I was talking about the idol and how its eyes move, and I'm like, oh my god, what? And you can see it. The eyes do move. It's really creepy. I love it. Then I got the Shiver Baby movie Blu-ray. Watched that, 5 stars. I had the time. It was like a 77-minute long film or something. Really short, really tense, really funny. Yeah, I loved it. I even saw someone review it saying how they didn't like how loud the score was. Like, they're like, oh, all these moments were like completely ruined by the score. I'm like, what do you mean? That's like what emphasized the anxiety of it, but also what made it funnier. Very funny movie. Definitely worth watching, Shiver Baby. On the 15th, so the same night, because I was like, I want to watch something that's short but kind of cartoonish that I won't really care that much for. So I watched the Bob's Burgers movie on Disney Plus. It was streamed in 4K, which is nice. I've never been a huge Bob's Burgers fan. Like, I've watched a good portion of episodes, but I've never been huge into it. It's like the next generation's Futurama kind of thing. Like, I love Futurama, and I will watch every episode over and over and over again. But Bob's Burgers, I'm like, I don't give a take, you know. So, but the movie was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It's one of those. It was okay. I think I even said the Carney song and dance number was amazing. The rest was all right. Just a long, mildly forgettable episode with musical numbers, and again, just that one really good musical number. Louise being the MVP, but that's obviously a given. Yeah, they had musical numbers in this. They weren't great, but they had the Carney one where it's like, oh, we're not going to have the main characters sing this. We're going to actually have proper people who can sing, and it was so fun to watch. Like, I would look up just that clip alone from this movie, and you'd be set. You don't have to watch the movie. You really don't. But still, it was fun. On the 16th, me and my mate rented. Actually, we bought on YouTube because it was like a few extra dollars to buy than to rent it. We bought McGruber. I'm not big on buying digital copies, but here we go. Yeah, we watched McGruber. We actually watched a bunch of sketches beforehand, so we got kind of an idea. Like, he obviously knew what McGruber was. He'd watched all these sketches before, so we watched a bunch on YouTube. And yeah, then we just watched the movie, and the movie's funny. I feel like it's slightly homophobic, but also it's like, I don't know. It's a weird thing, because I think I mentioned I kept thinking McGruber was homophobic, but then he really, really wanted to get his dick sucked by 2 other guys. It's a pickle. So, yeah, I thought it was funny. It was different to what I expected it to be compared to the sketches, but yeah, in the end, it's a very, very 2010 kind of SNL comedy movie. So, yeah, it was alright though. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I followed that up on the 17th with Temple of Doom. I gave this 4.5 stars. This time it was a lot of, you need to be in the right mood for it. And last time I had watched it was a couple of years ago. I gave it like 3.5. I'm like, I like it. I don't love it. I've always liked it as a kid. I always kind of liked it the most, I think, because Short Round, because it's the whole final sequence with the train carts and all this, the mine carts, and the bridge fight and all that kind of stuff. I always loved that stuff as a kid, even despite how terrifying Mola Ram was with the, oh, I'm taking your heart out of your chest, you son of a bitch. But on rewatch, I gave it 4.5 stars. It's like, last time I watched it, I was not in the mood because Dad put it on. I was like, well, he's using my room, I might as well watch it. And I didn't love it, but this time, yeah, I was actually in the mood for it, and I just loved every minute of it. It was beautiful. It's not the best movie in the world, obviously. There's the obvious, oh, it's racially insensitive, but at the same time, to me, I can discern a difference. I mean, obviously, I'm white, so I really shouldn't have an opinion on this, but there was two elements that I realized on my previous viewing. The white savior thing, I don't think is that much of a relevant argument because he's not going to a place to save them. He happens to save them because he wants fortune and glory. They're like, hey, we've got this stone. It's because of it being stolen. Our whole entire town is in disarray. It's dying. They've taken our children. Please help us. And he's like, look, I'll go to the place. I'll see if I can steal back the stone. But for myself, not for you guys. And then he steals the 3 stones and he hears the children who are being, child labor camp, basically. And he's like, I gotta save these kids. So he saves the kids, and you can say it's technically a white savior because he's a white person and he saves them, but it's also like, he didn't really want to. He just happened to do it because he's like, I gotta save these kids. I wouldn't feel right if I didn't. It just happened to do that. So, but then the racially insensitive part being, say, the dinner scene, it's all a joke. Like, I think it's a very funny scene, but I don't think it's funny because it's like, oh yeah, all Indians eat this stuff. It's like, no, they're literally a death cult. Like, I do not associate them with being Indian at all. It's a death cult. They eat fucked up shit because they're fucked up people. It's got nothing to do with their race. It's to do with their religion, which again is a death cult. So, human sacrifice cult. They will probably resort to cannibalism if they have to. They were eating human eyeballs. I think we're human. I don't know. It was in the soup. Anyway, still, I love the film. Amazing. It's not perfect, but 4.5 stars. Then I followed that up with The Last Crusade. I gave that 4.5 stars as well. Usually I give it 5 stars, but I just wasn't really feeling it this time. It felt too much like, I guess I'm tired of the Nazis as much as everyone else is to some degree, but it still has this element to it where the benefit of it is it's a really well-made film. The father-son relationship, all that kind of stuff is great. But the problem is the father-son relationship, the fact that it's not episodic anymore. It's now, oh, he has family. It's a whole thing now. It's like, do we really need this? So, that was the fun part about Temple of Doom. It was just an adventure. Now it's an adventure and he's got a dad. I'm like, I don't really care. But, it is what it is. Still a good movie. On the other hand, I watched Crystal Skull on the same night. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I liked it a lot more in my previous watch, but this time I was able to solidify what I didn't like. And if I look at it accurately, I liked the first hour and 20 minutes, and then after that, because I got a timer on my player, after that, didn't care. It's once the jungle scene started happening, it became like the obvious, CGI backgrounds, the over-the-top action scenes, that kind of stuff. It was like, this isn't great. Like, there were still some great practical moments later on, like the puzzle they get into the thingy, but there's a lot of it that's really... It makes you start to think too much about it. Like, the benefit of the previous films and none of the set pieces were set up like, you can only use this once. Like, you could argue that with Temple of Doom, like, well, they went down that minecart thing and it was all like a death trap. Why would they do that? Because that's the bad way. It's out of commission. They're not meant to go through there. It's comedically long because it's an action set piece. It's just, who cares? It's exaggerated for surrealness. It's funny. It's cool. But then, yeah, Crystal Skull, and you get all these people who are just like hiding in walls and then they just come out of walls and it's like, did they just put themselves in walls every single day just in case someone comes by? What do they do for food? Do they take, lunch breaks? What the hell's the deal with that? Then the whole factor of, if you open the thing up, it'll destroy it all. I'm like, why would anyone do that? There's a lot of dumb shit like that. It's just like, that's kind of weird. Do they have to fix that up every single time? I just don't know. So anyway, not a great film, but I still liked it. Then I did a double feature of, because my parents finally had left, I'd driven them to the train station, I drove back home, and I double featured Poltergeist 2 and 3. They weren't great. I watched this. I gave them both 2.5 stars. They have their pros and cons. The second one, I think the pro of it is the fact that it has the family and it has a really great set piece at the end. I don't like the fight with the villain because I even wrote in my review, it feels like the guy who played the villain died and they had to replace him with a stop motion creature. that actually happened. Turns out I was right. He died in the middle of production, so they had to replace him with a CGI creature, which they were like, well, not CGI, but again, like a digital creature, and they're like, oh, this is the beast now. He, instead of just being a dude who's a cult leader, now he's an actual beast. Now he's a literal beast, not just a dude who's done evil stuff, or like a entity who's like present itself in the form of this guy. So yeah, didn't love that final like 5 minutes that really wrapped it up quickly and was kind of dumb, but I did love the set piece leading up to that. So yeah, and I didn't mind the slow build, the character stuff. It was really interesting. It was fun to watch. So yeah, they tried. Not amazing. The first one's still just unbelievably good, but the second one not great. The third one, the third one has benefits with its practical designs. They've got a lot of great mirror sequences. All the effects work is in camera. It's really nicely done. But the dialogue and the characters are terrible. Every line of dialogue is a cliche. All the characters are like unrealistic and not interesting to watch. Even Carol Ann. They say Carol Ann a lot in this movie. It's just tiresome. It's not a great film. It does have some good practical effects. Like, honestly, I would suggest watching them just for the effects works alone. Like, I mean, the second one won an Oscar for its effects. The third one has all these great mirror shots. It has this one mirror shot where they're looking at a mirror that it's like a wall, a long wall, and it's got a mirror all the way down, and you can see reflections of each door. And there's a door behind them, which is in front of them in the mirror, and Carol Ann's there, and they're all standing behind the mirror, and they're talking to Carol Ann, and the psychic person realizes this, the medium realizes it's not actually Carol Ann, and Carol Ann grabs her from the mirror and turns her into just like a fossil who falls to the ground, and then they're all like, oh my god, what the hell just happened? And then suddenly the fossil just starts opening, and you hear screaming, and the girl, who's like the daughter of like the older guy, just tears her way through it and just comes out of this corpse. It is the most insane sequence, but a lot of the movie doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of it. I like the surrealness to a lot of it, but it's not fantastic. The villain's not that scary. It's very just weird. Like, a lot of stuff happens that doesn't get paid off because of mostly reshoots post the Carol Ann's actor's death, which honestly I would have preferred the original ending that I went for. It's dumb as hell. Like, I've seen the footage of it on YouTube. It looks really comedic, which is probably why they didn't go for it. But I would have preferred it because there's a whole character that they just don't reference again. He just goes into this mirror dimension and they just never bring him back. But in the alternate ending, he gets saved with the rest of them. He just wasn't there for the reshoots. So, yeah. Anyway. On the 20th, I watched Hard 8, because I'm starting my PTA run, Paul Thomas Anderson. I hadn't watched it before. It's a really nice Blu-ray from Imprint. Some nice special features as well. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's a movie that I think works better on second watch, because I have only watched it the first time. It's really kind of weirdly structured, but it's nicely shot, well acted. It's clear that like Paul Thomas Anderson's already like really good at his craft well before like his big hitters came out, even though his next hit was like Boogie Nights. So yeah, still gave it 3.5 stars. I don't love it. On rewatch there's a potential for me to love it more, but I thought it was good. But yeah, on the 21st, I technically did a double feature. It was weird because I started with Boogie Nights. I got to the point where there's 45 minutes left in the movie, and then I left. I went out and saw No Hard Feelings, so I vlogged that one first because I watched that in completion. I went to the cinemas, watched No Hard Feelings with my mate. I gave it 3.5 stars, with a like instead of not a like, because I didn't give Hard 8 a like. But No Hard Feelings I really liked. It was a different style of, like, it feels like it's a different style of like these kind of comedy films, but at the same time it's the exact same plot you've seen before in terms of kind of basic structure. But it's all about how the comedy works, and is it funny, that the characters work, and all that stuff worked for me. I really enjoyed it. I even referenced in my review saying it was a lot like Eastern Promises. Not really, but there's one scene that is, and it's, I didn't expect it. I understand when in the US it's a hard R film, and it's MA here in Australia, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, very funny though. But I was shocked to see that one particular scene on the beach. I'm like, oh my god, they've actually done that. It was insane. So yeah, it's fun. But yes, again, watched Bowie Nights. I gave it 5 stars. I honestly, it was tricky for me. I'm like, I don't want to give this 5 stars, but there's nothing wrong with this movie. Yeah, it's my second time watching it. I don't know. It's just he immediately, and this is meant to be like a low budget kind of film. Like this is, I think it was like an indie film or some shit like in that equivalent back then. But like you look at the cast and you're like, is it really? I mean, I guess a lot of these people are big name people now, but there's so much production design and everything that just works so well. And also there's like the element of I've already noticed that like there's a lot of actors from PT's first film that are now in his second film and they show up in his third and his fourth and whatever. Only every now and again there's someone not show up. But yeah, it's just a tremendous film. On the 23rd I watched Magnolia. I hadn't seen it before. I gave it 4 stars. It feels like a 4.5 to 5 star film. I think it's understandable that people call this a masterpiece. It was just hard for me to digest. Like, it was kind of slow and boring. It was completely different in style to his previous 2 films, like, in terms of, like, I guess, it has a little more, like, Hard 8, I think, in this pacing. But the thing is, the second half of it really worked. Like, it got to a stage where it was, like, finally ticking over. Like, it was building up, then it was, like, letting it all hit and release. And when you got to that hit and release, it really worked. And it was just insane. But it's also 3 hours long. There's a lot of this film, and yeah, it's very interesting. Very well acted from a lot of people. Just a very nicely produced film. And there's a whole sequence at the end which is just insane to watch. And it just keeps going. Like, I had dinner arrive between it. It was like a 20-minute long sequence. If you've seen it, it has to do with frogs. But, like, yeah, it was, I did not expect it. I forgot that happened in the movie. I think I'd heard someone talk about it, and it was happening, and suddenly I'm like, oh my god, my dinner's, like, almost here. Like, I had, like, Uber Eats coming by, and it was just, like, insane to watch it. But, it's very good. On the same night, I watched Extraction from 2020. I watched it with my mate on Netflix, and I gave it 2.5 stars. It's fine. It was fine. I didn't love it. We both didn't love it. I was like paying attention, and like we got halfway in, and my mate kind of like stopped paying attention, and then like I just stopped paying attention, and like I just stopped caring about the movie, and it just ended, and we're like, yeah, it's all right. Like it loses itself, I think. Like, especially the whole advertising thing of like, oh, we've got this whole one long take sequence that goes for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of lost me in that 20 minutes because it kind of just was just too much stuff. So yeah, I did mention in my review though, I'm so excited for each sequel to feature a new Hemsworth brother extracting the kid, then dying at the end. So it's not what's going to happen, but that's okay. On the 24th, I did the Blazing, and I watched Speed Racer, and I gave it 5 stars. I finally have logged it on my letterbox. I saw it in 35mm last time at the Astor, and I loved it. But this time I just... Oh, it's perfect. It's my only peeve about the movie. It's like a 99.9% movie. The only peeve is when they finally get to the kissing scene at the very end of the movie, and the kid and the monkey come in and be like, just gonna prepare you, they're about to make out, so if you don't like cooties, look away, because it's a kid's movie. It's like, if not for that one really annoying part that completely stops the whole entire movie in its tracks just for a bad joke, I would absolutely adore it. But it's like a 99.9% movie for me. But yeah, it's just visually amazing. It's a spectacle to watch. So yeah, 5 stars. And then on the next day, I watched technically 4 films, but one was a short film. I started with Island of Lost Souls, the 32 version. I watched the Criterion release. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was a lot more impressive than I expected it would be. The production design, the camera work, a lot of... Like, it's still very 30s in its audio and camera work, but just what they did with the characters and the narrative and the design work on the creatures was really interesting and quite terrifying. So I've got no real... I really liked it. Yeah, it was just very interesting. It was a much more interesting version of Frankenstein than I thought it would be, because it's like the opposite of Frankenstein, where he's like, I need to make a monster and I'm going to become like God. And this one, it's like, I'm going to make the monsters into men, but they're still monsters, and I'm still the monster anyway because I'm an absolute cretin for doing this. God. So yeah, but then I watched In the Beginning Was the End, The Truth About De-Evolution, which is the 1976 short film slash music video by Devo, which includes like 2 of their songs. I like Devo a lot. I got really big into them this year, and yeah, it was just really fun to watch this music video. And then I also watched the featurette of them talking about how Island of the Lost Souls inspired their band, their music, their style. So yeah, I watched that first, then I watched the music video, but that was good. Then I watched the Amusement Park, the Romero film. I have the Blu-ray. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. It's one of those, again, classic Romero in, oh yeah, you know how there's these themes? I'm not gonna make them subtle. They're gonna be obvious as shit. Like, it's so obvious. It literally starts with the old guy saying, "This is why being old sucks. Let me show you 50 minutes of why being old sucks." And yeah, it's only like a 54-minute long film, but it's still really good. I would definitely recommend it if you're a Romero fan and you like his work. It's yeah, it's good. It's great restoration. The special features are really good. Just a jam-packed Blu-ray. Then you had, on the same night again, I watched the Changeling. I watched the second sight version, which I don't have the 4K yet. I don't think I'm going to buy the 4K. I was actually really happy with the Blu-ray release anyway, because it has the exact same audio and special features that the 4K has. The 4K just has 4K picture, which again, limited edition of that would be nice with the booklet, but I don't know. I got this for free. When I'd done an interview with Caitlin Kohler, she and her partner were getting rid of a lot of Blu-rays, and they happened to have the Changeling. I've been wanting to watch it for years, and I was like, sure, I'll take that off your hands. I got it for free. Why would I need to buy the 4K now? If they hadn't given it to me, I would have ordered the 4K. And honestly, I still think the transfer looks really good. I gave the film 4 stars. I really liked it. Yeah, it's one of those 70s to 80s films where it's like, hey, main character's gonna witness some bad stuff in terms of, a kid dying that's usually their kid. Then they're gonna move into a house or move to a place that happens to have a ghost of a kid, and they're gonna have to deal with that. Hooray! Trauma. So, it's the 3rd film that I've seen like that. 2 in a week. One was a couple of years back with Don't Look Now, but this time it's the Changeling, and one that I'll mention in a couple things time. But on the next night, I watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, because I got the Scream Shout Factory release. Really good transfer. I gave it 3 stars. It's not a fantastic movie. I actually thought it would have been this is like the best film ever, but it's actually one of those, apparently one of the worst movies ever made kind of deal. Like, people pin it to that. I'm like, I think it's just the nostalgia that kept it high for me, because I'm like, this was such a fun watch, but as a movie, it's not great. It's just fun. But the CGI creatures they use at the end, awful. Oh my god, if only they'd gone with practical, I'd give it like an extra half star. Or maybe an extra full star, let's be honest, because it was bad. But they have so many great practical effects within it. The costumes are great. It's all bizarre. I love too how it's such a Transformers thing that you finally get a movie. Hey, all these characters have these costumes and these animals are their things, because they're all dinosaurs. Now, they're like Asian inspired, so this person's a mantis, this person's a frog, they got all this dumb shit, and I'm like, this is so bizarre, but obviously you gotta sell toys. Transformers the movie. So, but it's Power Rangers. I don't know. I liked it. I've always loved it as a kid. I haven't watched it in such a long time, but yeah, it's fun. And the Blu-ray is a really good Blu-ray, so, it's not the great special features-wise, but it does have a good featurette of them talking about the film. So, yeah. Anyway, on the same night, I watched The Butterfly Effect, because my video for my This Weekend had come out, and I had someone comment saying how the Australian version's the director's cut, but the better version's the theatrical cut, which is on the UK and US Blu-ray. And while I do agree that, yes, it's on the US and UK Blu-ray, the Australian cut is the theatrical cut. It is still, the runtime that it says is the, director's cut runtime, which is very weird, because I looked it up. The director's cut runtime's 116 minutes, I think it was, and then it was 100, or maybe it was 113, and then it was 108 minutes was the theatrical cut. Either way, it was the theatrical cut I watched, because it had the theatrical cut ending, and it didn't have any of the stuff to do with the medium, because I looked it up. I actually enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's also one of those, I think, at the time, panned, everyone hated it. What the fuck is this crap, even though it made a lot of money? Sure, Ashton Kutcher, not great, but I liked, it's one of those things that, if you don't really think about it, you don't really think about how dumb of a movie it is, like what it does and its rules and stuff. It's if I was to be really cynical about it and really nitpick, I'd probably give it 2.5 stars. But it's one of those, for me, you kind of go into it with this, go for the ride, and it's a hell of a fucking trip. And there's some really fun stuff they do. I like the changes with the color grading. There's some great effects works in it. The characters are really interesting. Like, there's a lot of shit that these characters go through, even though it's technically different timelines. It's interesting. And I did like the theatrical ending. The ending I got was the one where he ends up going back in time to the point where he first meets the girl and tells her, I don't like you, you're ugly, and you smell bad. And she doesn't like him and leaves. And that completely changes their lives to the point that he's still friends with the other guy, and he still goes to uni, he still has all that normal stuff, his regular self, just not with this girl, not with all this other trauma of the dog, the baby, all these other people dying. And then he sees her in the city, and they just keep walking. And I like that about it. I'm like, yeah, it's like a live and learn. Like, yeah, maybe if you don't do stupid shit, or stupid shit doesn't happen because of other stupid shit, you can just live your life. There is the director's, because there's like 3 endings to the theatrical cut where they see each other and he starts talking to her and they move on, they go together, or he sees her, stops, and then follows her with the implication that he'll try to talk to her, but they never establish it. They never conclude it, I guess I should say. The director's cut's the one where he goes back in time as a baby in the womb and kills himself. That one's hilarious that they actually did that. Like, that would be terrifying to watch. That's the only thing I'd seen of the movie before I'd seen the theatrical cut. I'd seen that ending, and I was like, what the hell is this movie? That was all I knew about it, so I expected to see that, and I didn't. And when I didn't, I was like, oh, actually, this is quite nice. So, yeah. Anyway, then I did another Paul Thomas Anderson on the 27th. I watched Punch Drunk Love, the Criterion 5-star movie. I loved it. It's probably... it's not my favourite of his because he's got so many good movies, but I'll have a favourite when I've watched all of his movies, which will be by next week sometime, hopefully. The rest of them are like 3 hours long. It's like, oh my god, I really want to watch them, but they're so long and I'm so busy. I don't know, give me 2 weeks, I'll get it all done. But yeah, loved it. Criterion's great. Interesting sound design for the movie, but yeah, and I like how it was like 96 minutes long. It was really short. It was great compared to his previous films, which are all very long. This one, yeah, 96 minutes. I also watched the Mattress Man commercial that's on as a special feature. A lot of them have special features that are like outtakes of the movie that he's made into short films. I haven't watched any of those except for this one. It's funny. On the same night, I watched The Haunting of Julia. I gave it 3.5 stars. I watched the Scream Factory 4K release. I really debated because they have the ear for sale for like imprint, and they were like, hey, look, we've got the Blu-ray set, you can get it. To be fair, I could see that this film would probably still look good without the HDR grading, but I really liked the look of it. The sound of it was like... not the best soundtrack, as in like the audio, the 2.0 stereo, whatever they had, wasn't the best, but that's like the same across all releases. I didn't take a look at any of these special features or anything because I had to go to bed like immediately after because I had work the next morning. But I did like it a lot. It was interesting. I think that because a lot of it reminded me of the Changeling, because it's again, parent loses a kid, move into a house happens to be possessed by a child, the ghost of a dead child. Oh, look-a-dee-doo. But like, where the Changeling is more of a conspiracy movie that happens to involve this dead kid, the mystery about it, what the hell's going on, the whole Changeling element to it, it's literally in the title. But then and it has some great, tense, scary moments, which I really thought was wonderful. But then this one didn't. Haunting of Julia was like, it's more of this fear comes from like the gaslighting and all this stuff, but then that stuff like ends halfway through. Like, I was like, is this really a ghost movie? Is there really a ghost? Because it just felt like everyone was gaslighting her, like, oh, the house is haunted, you should move back in with your husband, he'll treat you right this time. Sorry your daughter died, but no one cares about that anymore. And then the husband dies, and they never talk about it, and like all these characters just keep dying, and it turns out, yeah, there's a ghost, and it's a vengeful one, and it's an interesting second half. It's a very iconic ending, that's for sure. Yeah, and it's again really nicely shot. The 4K looks amazing. I'm still pretty happy I didn't get the imprint version to some degree, even though mine did come with the title saying in the movie Full Circle. It didn't actually have the Haunting of Julia as the title card, which is interesting. I do think the title works a lot better, but it's also like the Changeling, where the title kind of ruins the movie to some degree. Like, it ruins the twist of the movie to some degree. But the Haunting of Julia is still a good title. I like that as well. I mean, it's based on a book called Julia, so, you know. It feels like a weaker version of Don't Look Now, because I think Don't Look Now is a more powerful film. I didn't love it, but I think it's a more powerful film. This one is still a very good film. I think they're all good, all three of these. But I think The Changeling's my favourite of the three. Again, they're all slightly different, because they've all got like the kind of similar first halves, but then the second half is all kind of different more, in a way, where, you know, Don't Look Now, is it a ghost of his daughter that he's following? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to spoil the twists or anything. Haunting of Julia is like, well, what's exactly the whole thing about this girl? Is it a ghost? What's it doing? What's the point of it? It still becomes that whole mystery. Let's look into the stuff, and that's when I'm like, okay, it's just the Changeling. Let's get on with it. But yeah, I like the Changeling the most, I think. On the 28th, I watched Alien 3. I actually watched the assembly cut. It's the second time I've watched it now. I hadn't watched the theatrical cut in like 15 years, I think. So I watched the assembly cut a few years back because I kind of disliked Alien 3 for a long time. Watched the assembly cut. I gave it like 4.5 stars when I watched it. I'm like, this is amazing stuff. But on my rewatch, I gave it 4 stars. It lacks a lot in the story elements. It's kind of dull. But I love the production design. I love the alien design. The extension of half an hour adds a lot of great character stuff, but it just feels slow and a bit empty. It still is a better film than the theatrical cut. But, yeah. I'd recommend it. If you're going to watch it, don't watch the theatrical cut. Watch the extended assembly cut. It's a very gritty movie. If you don't like the fact that they kill off, you know, Newt and Hicks, then they wouldn't have worked in this movie anyway, so I'm okay with that. I was never overly burdened by it. Like, sometimes some characters are only good for their own side stories, you know? But I think as a good resolution to the Alien saga, I guess, or to Ripley's story, I do like it a lot. I like how, again, it goes back to like the Richard III film, but with the expanded narrative and stuff from the second film as well included. Like, they've all built onto each other. Then I guess, sure, you can watch Resurrection if you want to. I don't mind Resurrection. It's a guilty pleasure. I enjoy it. I don't love it, but I think it's okay. It's okay. You know, if you can get past how they brought her back, stupid. But I love Prometheus and Alien Covenant, so, you know, not a bad series overall, realistically. And then last night I watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I watched that with Sam and his girlfriend, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it. I actually liked it more than I thought I would, which is fine. I wasn't expecting, like, the best movie in the world, especially after Crystal Skull, and the fact that this one doesn't have Spielberg directing, it was a bit, But I still think the directing was quite nice. I think the first 45 to an hour I didn't love. It took me a bit of time to get used to it, like, there's obviously the de-aging stuff at the start, which is like, I'm not huge on it, but it's some decent action set pieces and stuff. It wasn't until he put on his fedora that I'm like, this feels like Indiana Jones. Like, he started to look more like himself rather than, look, it's de-aged Indy, and then it's de-aged Indy in a helmet. Now he's got his hat on. I'm like, yeah, now it feels like Indiana Jones, you know? Like, he looks like him rather than just looking like a CGI version of Indiana Jones. He still sounds old as shit, though. But I did like, basically for me, the movie I was sold on when they catch a plane at one stage, but it's actually after that whole set piece in, it's like Morocco or something. It's a really good set piece. I really enjoyed it, actually. But it was, when I was sold on it being an Indiana Jones film was when they caught the train and it's had the train transition on the map and everything. And it's like, look, they're on a train, now they're on a plane, now they're on a boat. And I'm like, yes, this is what this movie's been missing. It's like everything has its touchstones. You got the hat, you got the whip, you got the costume, you got it belongs in a museum. You got the stuff that's like, you know, regurgitated stuff. Whatever. Even though I thought his whip seemed really weird in this movie. Like, it worked in the flashback. I don't think it worked when he was 90 years old. It just looked really out of place. He's going into this, like, you know, late 60s bar, and in like Morocco or whatever, and he's got a whip, and I'm like, yeah, this feels really weird. He shouldn't have a whip. And then he didn't use the whip for the rest of the movie, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, my brother's girlfriend had pointed out, she's like, he doesn't use the whip that much in the movie. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. He only uses it like the start of the movie, and then there, and he uses it once to, like, you've probably seen the scene in the trailer, he whips around the room to, like, scare everyone, and then they pull their guns out on him, and I think he realizes this whip is useless now, because everyone has guns, even though they always did. But, yeah, so, again with the Nazis, but I did like the resolution. I liked the final sequence on a plane. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I actually was surprised that they went with that. I was really surprised of how far they went into that particular angle. I thought they were going to do that, they weren't going to do that, or they were going to do something completely different, or they were going to go where they actually intended to go. I'm very interested. I've just found it very funny where they actually went up to. So that was cool. The death of the villains was, I mean, not bad, I guess. Like, it's not as, like, I guess, messed up as what happens to previous villains, except for, of course, in the fourth movie. But, like, I found it interesting, because it was more of the aftermath of what happens. Like, they see what's going to happen to them, it happens, and then you see what happens to them afterwards, and you're like, oh, they oofed, you know, charred, you know, it's just woof. But still, I thought it was interesting. I didn't love the ending, I guess. I don't know, it's such a non-ending in a way. If you've seen it, you'll know it's just, the ending's very weird. It's just kind of there, like, there we go. That's it. Bye. Thanks for watching. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like Indy's going on his next adventure, or, you know, like how the fourth one wrapped him up with, again, you've already had Run Into the Sunset, which felt appropriate. You've had him getting married, which felt generic but okay. And then you've got this one. It's like, wow, this kind of feels like the weaker of all of the endings, because this one just feels like nothing really did anything for him. He's still just a regular dude. Anyway, and last but not least, we have There Will Be Blood, which is my last film that I've watched for the month. And, yeah, just my next, probably, I'd argue my favourite PTA. It's really hard to say. I'll know more in a few weeks, but, this was the first one of his that I'd seen. I haven't seen it in 7 years, maybe? I don't know. It's been a hell of a long time. Maybe since 2015, 2016 period. But, yeah, I don't know. It was really good. It's an outstanding film. Amazing performances. So, yeah. Long one for this month, so I'll wrap this up. I don't know how many films I'm going to watch next month. I'm trying to just watch as many as I can while people are not at the house, but I've got so much work. Anyway, this might be delayed in terms of what day of the month it'll come out, because of just how long the video is and how little amount of time for editing I have this weekend. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next month with whatever else I get around to watching. Adios.